Welcome back to the rundown. It's myself, Joseph Nagy, with Brendan Worth joining me. As always, we're just going to have a great time today. Got a big schedule. Tonight, we have a rescheduled game for Big Rapids Boys basketball. Friday night, we have a huge slate for CSAA. Season's also winding down, so we have a little bit of a race for who's going to get into that four-team spot of the CSAA tournament. And then obviously, we're going to do our dark horse half-court buzzer beater predictions at the end of the episode. Stacked episode, but I'm excited, Brandon.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And especially now we've started to take a look at where the schedules are going to line up at the end of the year. And especially now with some of these games being postponed, and naturally schedules have already been filled for quite some time for these athletic directors. So many of these games having to be moved to the final week of the season. I mean, we could have some winner take all, get into the CSAA playoff type games here at the end of the season. Just going to be a very exciting finish. We can't wait to cover it for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should start with that first. Just talking about the CSAA tournament, there's 5 teams as of right now who are right in that slot of being able to make it into that 4-team threshold. Right now, Reed City leads the CSAA 6-0. Then it's Nuevo, White Cloud, Grant, and then Big Rapids. Kent City is kind of in that conversation also, but just at the end, they're kind of there. They need to go on a little bit of a run to be able to get there. But 5 teams right now that can really make some noise for these last few weeks. Brandon, who do you think is kind of going to shape out these 4 teams that you think are going to make it in? And what team do you think is going to drop out?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I know we talked about it on last episode, which you haven't seen it yet. Go on to YouTube and log on. You can watch that episode there. We kind of broke it down a little bit more too. And Joe, you mentioned this, and I think it's kind of more evident than ever over the last couple of weeks is this really. You don't want to count some of the other teams out, of course, but this is really a 5-team race for that top 4 spots. You look at where these teams are at. Reed City and Big Rapids have been dominant all season. Nuevo and Grant have been very good clubs, as they always are down M37. And then there's White Cloud, who have played fantastic basketball and have put themselves in really good position here halfway through the year. So you look at those 5 teams, and there's 4 spots. So one team naturally is going to be held out of the top tier CSAA tournament battling for a trophy, which is a shame because all five teams really feel deserving to be in those spots. So necessarily one's going to get voted out and likely have a pretty easy road test to the 5th road spot. Based off of now, obviously, what these teams are at a month from now will be very interesting to tell, especially like the Chip Hills, the Central Montcalms, if they make their way up, what those teams play like in February, if they play better basketball, as we've started to see over the last couple of weeks. But based on where we're at right now, I think right now Big Rapids is at the 5 spot. I think they're going to get in naturally, and I think the biggest reason is there's a lot of these games that they've had rescheduled right now, and the only reason they're in the 5 spot is they're 3-1 overall because they haven't had as many games. Obviously, the Kent City game, as we're recording this on Wednesday, was canceled as of last night, Tuesday, which will be playing later on Wednesday night, and they haven't necessarily played Nuevo yet. They lost to Reed City, obviously. They were able to get a really good victory, especially against a couple of these mid-tier teams, especially. I mean, you look at where Tri-County is. I mean, they're starting to try to they got their 2nd win of the season. They're trying to keep the momentum going a little bit. But especially when you look at where they're at schedule-wise, I think this is really a good position for Big Rapids, especially playing some of these teams in the last couple of weeks when they'll be playing their best basketball. Reed City looks really tough to catch right now. I mean, especially having that gap still being unblemished in the CSAA with wins against Grant, wins against Big Rapids. They're really holding their own. We'll get to see them play White Cloud later on this year, which will be very exciting. That game should be very, very cool to watch. But right now, I think I'm leaning towards Grant or Nuevo being in that outage of that 5th spot, just because of the fact that unless White Cloud kind of teeters off, which very well could happen, I think right now you're looking at Nuevo and Grant kind of fighting the tier of who can outlast the other. And Grant obviously had the upper hand in that matchup earlier on in the M37 rivalry where they got the win against Nuevo. So I think right now you look at Grant as being that 4th team. Nuevo would be the 1st team out hypothetically, and I think MPR, obviously the Michigan Power Rating for those that follow along statistically, would support of that. Those would be the 4 teams: Big Rapids, Reed City, White Cloud, and Grant. All 4 of those teams would be in. Nuevo would be the first one out if we went off of those standards, which based on right now is kind of where I'm at. Not necessarily I'm trusting completely all all the statistics, but those are my four teams right now. And based on down the stretch, I think it's also really going to be a big test for White Cloud because they're going to have Reed City and Grant in the last 2 weeks of the season. So really, they win, they're going to solidify their spot. If they might fall off, Nuevo and Grant are going to be chopping at the bit to take those third and fourth spots.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I think Nuevo or Big Rapids going to be the ones to kind of fall out. I think White Cloud is going to be the most interesting one. 11-2 overall. They've been playing very solidly for the past few weeks. I think they're on a what 7 game win streak as of right now. They haven't played Grant with that postponed game. That's going to be made up at a later time. But they have one of the tougher remaining schedules out of anybody else in the CSAA with Reed City, now Grant as well, Nuevo. 3 teams who are just as well trying to fight as hard as they can to make sure they can stay in that 4 spot threshold. So we'll see how that plays out. I think for me though, Big Rapids or Nuevo are going to be the ones that are going to be fighting for that 4 and 5 spot of who's going to be flip-flopping in between those two. But White Cloud, I think, definitely does have the toughest test. But as of right now, I'm not really too worried about their ability because they've been playing very well the last 7 games, as well as playing some tough teams, Traverse City Christian, St. John's, but they're playing some of those games where, it's a toss-up, they're able to win it, and they're able to get some solid momentum. So White Cloud, I think, is going to be a team who could go either way, but in my opinion, I think they're going to be pretty much solid, locked up, if I'm being honest. So, Brandon, I think we'll get into the next part of the episode. Big Rapids playing tonight. We'll kind of give our little two-piece opinions on this one. I'll be producing this game. Brandon will be on the call, so the dynamic duo will kind of be in action. But, Brandon, what do you think tonight's going to happen? Grant versus Kent City. Not a chalk game, but one that's definitely could be a trip-up game for Big Rapids. What do you think?
Yeah, Big Rapids Kansas City is going to be a heck of a game, I think. I really do think Big Rapids is going to win this one. I think they have a really confident team, and especially after bouncing back against Cadillac with that Central Montcalm game last Friday, I think they really found their stride offensively. That's something I want to see carry over, which on the road, they haven't been as great offensively as they have been necessarily at times at home. As far as efficiency-wise, points-wise, they're still putting up some really good numbers. I mean, you saw them put up 56 in the opener against Shepherd. They scored 61 at White Cloud in their most recent away game. So I think you look at those things and those factors, and I think you're starting to see this offense starting to click a little bit better, and I think that's going to translate on the road. Now, of course, with no school today, that's going to be a very interesting factor going into this game because, I mean, we both know, Joe, in our times in in our careers, snow day games are very much the hardest to prepare for when you have all of that time ahead of you throughout the day. So that's going to be a really interesting adjustment. I'm sure they'll get a shoot around in. They'll be ready to go. But especially for Kent City, I mean, right now they're playing their best basketball. They gave a really good run to Reed City on the road. I mean, a 1-point loss for them. That's almost a win in their book for where they're at right now this year. They beat Montebello in their last game, who's a really good team, a 5-10 MPR team. They're very, very solid. I believe 7-win team right now, approaching probably a 11 or 12 win season by the time it's all said and done. So that's a really good team. So they're playing their best basketball right now, Kent City is. So I think this game's going to be closer than people think. If Big Rapids is able to move the basketball around efficiently, create some open shots, knock them down, I think they're going to be in really good shape because I think they do have an advantage defensively against Kent City. I know Kent City, of course, is a very good defensive team. They're one of the best in the CSAA, top 4 as far as points allowed per game. In best in CSA. So I think that'll be very interesting to see how their defense adapts. But I think Big Rapids, they want to play that track meet style. They want to score, and they want to score, and they want to score. If they're able to do that, I think they're going to have enough to get by Kent City's defense. But I really want to see how they play on the defensive end. They had 4 blocks against Central Montcalm, along with almost double-digit steals. I think that's going to be a really big factor to see if they can turn over Kent City's offense and turn that into points and see if they can run away with this one.
Yeah, the biggest thing for Kent City is if they're able to kind of slow down because Big Rapids really takes control of the game when they get those steals and they can get those fast break buckets because a lot of that momentum too comes with a lot of the dunks that they can get, a lot of those big time plays where they get the steals and they can pull up from 3 as well. So it's a dangerous team, Big Rapids. Kent City, I think, has to really settle down and just make sure that they make no mistakes when they're bringing up the ball, make sure they get set up in the offensive zone. If they can do that, that's going to be an interesting setup because, like you said, they allow the least amount of points in the CSAA. Big Rapids is a team that can go on streaks, and it's going to be a little bit of a tale of two philosophies of how these two defenses, how these two offenses play. But Big Rapids, if they can get it started with some steals and some good momentum boost early, I think that's going to be all she wrote for the Eagles. So I think I'm going to take Big Rapids as well tonight, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a blowout as people think. I'll probably stay within single digits, I think, but close to that 10-point threshold. I think you could probably guess, but I don't know. What else do you want to talk about here, Brandon?
Well, we got to get into our half court shots, of course. I mean, it's about that time, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about anything else before we got to that. I knew that was going to be coming up, but I mean, I just wanted to see. But anyways, all right, half court shots it is. Let's get right into it. Brandon, I'll let it start off with you. I think, especially since last week we talked about end of season outlooks for this whole thing, I think we should talk about this week. What are some matchups that you think are going to be a little bit of an upset? What are some things that you're going to be looking to see for Wednesday if a lot of teams have this postponed game as well as Friday night?
Yeah, I think mine this week, of course, I'm going to stay a little bit more conservative. Obviously, not wearing the glasses this week. But I think right now, I'm going to be looking at a game that probably nobody is going to be looking at, and that is the Tri-County Lakeview game. This one going to be at Howard City. Now, these are the two teams at the bottom of the table, right? There's no theoretical reason we should be looking at this game being a, oh my gosh, this is a standings defying playoff contention type of game, of course. I
Packed
know Joe's
barn, everything. It's going to be a
yeah, no.
barn burner.
No, this is going to be an epic game. I think it finishes within 5 points. I think Tri-County gets the win at home, but I will be very, 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 very shocked if this game ends up being a 10, plus 10-point favor in favor of other team. I know Tri-County's coming in as the more hot team right now. I mean, they've played some very good games. They theoretically should win this game based on the way that we've watched them play over the last couple of games. What I've seen on film, they should be able to win this game by 10. I don't know what it is, but I think this game finishes within 5 points. We might even see overtime between these two teams, which would be absolutely electric. But I think Tri-County gets the win at home. Now, you're not going to be looking at this game too in depth, but I'm going to tell you right now, you might regret it because this one might turn into a classic.
Hey man, I'm liking what we're seeing. All right, as a Viking myself, I'm hopefully seeing that we get a W out of that one. But for me, I think you got to look towards this Friday. Big Rapids is taking on Grant. That's going to be a game that I think is going to be the telltale of how the rest of the season goes for both of these teams. It's at Big Rapids. Big Rapids on Friday nights is electric, and it's a really, really tough place to play. Grant is coming off a pretty solid situation. They beat Tri-County. They beat Baldwin. However, they had their game against Central Montcalm postponed yesterday. So they're going to be the same way. Snow day and kind of making sure that they have a lot more practice to get ready for it. And making that trip up to Big Rapids is always tough on a Friday night. I mean, from Grant to Big Rapids is a 45, 50-minute drive. So it's not an easy one to make, especially with everything else going on with the snow and stuff like that. It's a mental game for the Tigers. So I think they're going to go into there. I think Big Rapids is going to win it, regardless, as much as I'm talking up this Tiger squad. But I think this is going to be the turning point for Big Rapids to make that push for the 4th spot or even the 3 spot in the CSAA. And Grant's going to be a spot where they're going to have to really step it up and play very well for these next few games because they're not going to be able to take down the Cardinals. I was supposed to be on the call for that game. I will not be. I'll be in Chicago, which is unfortunate. But I'm looking forward to seeing how this team does. I know it's a surprise to you, Brandon. I'm sad as well, but some scheduling conflicts came up, and I'm not going to be able to be on the call. But I think Big Rapids is going to be able to do it even without me there. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it should be a very fun game, and looking forward to seeing it. I'll be obviously in Allendale, so you won't hear my voice as well. You'll probably hear JT Scarpelli's for those that tuned in last Friday. But no, it should be a really good matchup. Tigers and Cardinals, two top 4 teams, going to battle it out. I mean, what else is better than that?
I don't think anything. I can't even think of it. Nothing on my head right now that I can think is better than that. But CSAA is ramping up. A lot of postponements are going to make for a crazy last couple of weeks. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be hectic. It's going to be crazy, but we wouldn't want it any other way. And this is the spot, the rundown, for you to know whatever else is going on in the CSAA. But I think that's going to be it. A little bit shorter of an episode today, but obviously with all the cancellations, don't have much to talk about. So I'm looking forward to it. Catch Brandon on the call tonight. I'll try to get this episode out before the game tonight, but we're going to have a nice little weekend as well for Big Rapids basketball and CSA as a whole. Brandon, any closing regards that you would like to tell the people?
White Cloud, I think is gonna be in really good shape down the stretch. Also, another team that starts with White Hall. I mean, they look really good. They beat Cadillac on the road last night. I believe they play at Newaygo on Friday. That Viking team, boy, they could be state contenders at this point. I'll say it right now, but they look really good.
Yeah, Whitehall's a team that's going to be playing a lot of CSAA teams, I've noticed they're going to be playing Newaygo, Big Rapids. I think they're playing one more, or I guess Fremont was a CSAA team, so there's that. But Whitehall still is a team that can throw a wrench in there for, I guess, maybe momentum stakes. But I'm looking forward to it. I think that's going to be it for the rundown. Thanks for tuning in. We will be back next week, Wednesday, as well, getting another episode out. Brandon, it's been a great episode. Anything else?
Just one more. No, I'm just kidding. We'll send you guys on your way. Enjoy basketball this week, and we'll see you back here next week.
Take care, everybody.